Sheriff, Doa Ana County. My background is I joined the Army when I was straight out of high school. I did 4 years there. I had several things that I did in the Army. I went in as an intelligence person. I went to the Defense Language Institute. I was attached to 10th Group Special Forces. I became a sniper. I did espionage in Germany. And funny thing is, after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on my training, when I got to Europe, they had me play baseball for the Air Force.
Oh, wow.
And basically leaving every Thursday to go play other countries and things is basically what I did in the Air Force. They found that more valuable somehow. So how I ended up here is that Coach Cook, back in 1985, saw me play in Spain. He was there on vacation, I believe. Came and asked me after the game what my plans were, and I was going to re-up. I'd already visited the re-up officer, and I didn't sign the papers, but he caught me and he offered me a 4-year scholarship to New Mexico State, where I ended up coming here and signing the papers. After that, I immediately went to the Las Cruces PD for almost 8 years. Then I took a job with the U.S. Marshal Service, stayed with them until 14 when I retired from there after 20 years of federal service.
All right, so you've got a lot of experience in law enforcement, sounds
Yes,
like.
sir.
So we'll get right into it. Why do you think you're the best candidate for this position of Doa Ana County Sheriff?
So the reason I got in the race is because of the state of affairs at the Sheriff's Office. And I know this because I've been several times to talk to the Sheriff's Union. And they're the ones who kind of dragged me back into law enforcement, because I own this business here, which is Hacienda Carpet and Tile, and I've owned it for 23 years. And so ever since I retired, I do all the commercial work here. I make a very good living here. There's no reason for me to get back into this. But after hearing some of the deputies telling me what's going on over there and whatever, it became like kind of a passion of mine to, okay, I can make life better for the deputies. I can make everyone safer in Doa Ana. I have the experience over the person that's in there now. And I just think overall, it's a question of, it's almost bigger than me. I need to get in there and win to make Doa Ana County safer by stopping the drugs, stopping the human trafficking, stopping these things that are coming in because of the border problems that we have. Homelessness is on there as well. School safety is on there as well.
So with that being said, what do you think are some of the mistakes that the current administration are making, and how would you fix that?
Well, let me tell you about the glaring mistake that just happened. So the governor made available $50 million to all the different entities in New Mexico that are down people in their departments. For example, the PD, Sunland Park, all these people were eligible to put in for this grant. The PD put in for it, and they were awarded $8.75 million. For whatever reason, and I call it dereliction of duty, and I call it not being a good steward of our money, is she didn't put in for it. She admitted in a debate the other night that it was a one-page survey, and it didn't seem to her like it was a grant. So I called it a $6 million mistake, because the estimation is Doa Ana County would have got $6 million. So she's talking about how it's hard to recruit, and she's down 45 people, but at the same time she failed to put in for this grant, which $6 million goes a long way in bonuses and retainment bonuses for the Sheriff's Department.
So how would you go about recruiting new deputies in that case, if you were to have this grant?
So I've already, I guess, in hoping that I get in office, I've already started recruiting. There are a lot of good people in Las Cruces that I know, and I know how to look for people that can talk to people have good conversational skills, people that have morals and values. I know a lot of people like that in the community, and I would recruit from this community to try and fill those spaces.
1 second here. So you mentioned in last week's forum that you'd like to take a more preventative than reactionary stance against crime, and you mentioned creating a task force. So just tell me a little bit about how you would implement a task force. What would go into that?
So there's several task forces that I would be involved with, but let me tell you, the first one is bringing back Stone Garden, which is a grant. But through that grant, you have almost a task force-like prevention plan that goes out there. So when you're involved in Stone Garden, you're given overtime money, you're given equipment, you're given vehicles, and these are just to use for Stone Garden. You can't use this stuff just to go out on patrol. So people sign up, young deputies especially who need the overtime, and they go down there in the South, and we have boots on the ground intelligence from the Border Patrol. So they're saying, hey, the fentanyl is going through this way, or human trafficking has been a big problem on this highway. So we saturate that place, and then we catch those pills coming across, catch those human traffickers, and that's just one thing. The other thing, and I'll give you an example, since I came from the U.S. Marshals, they have a task force. And if you send one deputy over there, which Todd Garrison did because we came up together when he was sheriff, so we had a great working relationship. He gave me one deputy. In exchange, he gets all my deputies. So we would help that one deputy with the magistrate load, the city load, the state load, so they wouldn't have to do it by themselves. We would spread it out, we'd have a roundup, and we'd go take care of the backlog of any warrants that were going on. So it's a win-win situation. I mean, the sheriff complains because she goes, I can't afford to give up one deputy. Well, you're not giving up that deputy, you're just having him work with our people, and you get 20 marshals out there helping, so it's one and you get 20. So she looks at it from a way that I believe because of her inexperience, she can't understand how it works because she's never tried it. The FBI has the same thing, the DEA has the same thing, ATF has a task force. You've just got to be able to communicate with these people and talk to them and participate in their programs. And they have the money. And it's not like the money's coming out of the sheriff's budget. It would be coming out of these entities' budgets.
So I think you already kind of answered this question talking about Stone Garden, but how involved should Dasso be when it comes to the southern border?
Well, we're not involved at all right now. You have never seen the sheriff on TV with a huge fentanyl bus or anything like that behind her. You've seen her on TV because of shootings. I'd like to have my PIO, Public Information Officer, weekly on there with fentanyl bus and say, we are making a difference. Because right now I don't think we're doing our due diligence to the rest of the country. As you can see, they think they're all border states because of what's coming into those states, and that drug metastasizes in each of those states, and they have huge problems. Because once it leaves here, it becomes more expensive as you get to the East Coast because of what it takes to get there. Right here it's fairly inexpensive. You go to New Jersey and they make a lot of money off of that. And so the cartel is obviously tied to all of this, and the money comes back to them. So they're very well funded right now, and we don't have anybody down there in the South area working on these type of things. And it's just a shame that we're not doing our due diligence to put a finger in that flow of fentanyl. It's not just fentanyl, it's all drugs, but the fentanyl and the trafficking.
You know, school safety is another huge concern of many in this community, and you know, there's already one district, it's the Gadsden Independent School District. They've implemented Parents on Patrol, but I'm sure you've talked about implementing school resource officers as well. How do you feel about that? So
in the past, what it's been is the school district works with the sheriff. They pay a certain amount, the sheriff pays a certain amount. Somehow there became a disconnect, and all the officers were removed from the Gadsden Independent School District. I know this because the president of the Gadsden School District called me one day and said, hey, we have no school resource officers. No one is protecting our kids out there. And you know, that's a shame that we do that, because there should be at least one, and I tell her in debates, I say, there should be one school resource officer in every school. And she replies, well, that's not enough. And I reply, well, one is better than zero. So obviously in a bigger school like Gadsden High, it's a broader school, more landscape than an elementary school would be. So you might need 2 or 3 resource officers there. But as you can see on YouTube, when she went in front of the commissioners, and Diana Murillo, who's the mayor in Anthony, and she's the vice chair of the commissioners, called her out right there on YouTube during one of the meetings, and basically called her a liar because she had told her the reason they didn't have school resource officers is because she asked for 12 people and the commissioners denied it. So they got up right there and said that's absolutely not true. Fernanda Macias got up to the mic and says she's absolutely not being truthful with you people. There were never 12 people asked for, And if they were, we would have definitely considered it. But his deal is, why aren't we filling the positions that we have open right now? Because if you fill those positions, I will give you the 12 extra people. So that's why one of my first priorities would be to fill all those positions and then go ahead and ask for 12 additional officers so we can put, the right amount of people in these schools and have our kids safer. I mean, having a parent there is great, but it's not gonna prevent an Uvalde from happening. You have to have armed people on deck, ready to go, and they have to have a standing order which says, no matter what, your first priority is to stop that threat. And that's not only for the school officers, that goes for the whole department, because you need that standing order so something like in Uvalde doesn't happen where they're standing outside the door waiting to get an order to say, yes, we can go in. They have a standing order that says you stop that threat no matter what it takes.
So moving on to county government, you were assistant county manager for Luna County, correct?
Yes, sir.
Why'd your tenure end?
So actually, the county manager was let go, and his name was Mr. McSherry. I thought he was a great guy. He's an engineer, probably a brilliant man, but probably his only problem is he'd never been in charge of people before, so he didn't know exactly how to deal with the different problems that come up with having 300 employees. So I took care of that for him, and we worked very well together because I don't have a problem looking through stuff and seeing people that haven't been doing their job and getting rid of them, which is what I did when I was there. When Mr. McSherry was let go, it wasn't so bad driving an hour from Las Cruces, driving an hour back when I felt I was making a huge difference. They appointed Chris Bryce as the interim county manager at that time, and I just felt that we wouldn't have the same working relationship, so I resigned along with other people that I had brought on personally. For example, John Heffley, who is going to be my undersheriff, I had him in charge of the human risk and another department, and he resigned with me and left because it's not so bad driving an hour when you think you're making a difference and things are going well, but when you think it's just not going to work out, it's just not worth it, so we resigned.
Got it. Okay, so expanding on that, how do you feel like your experience as a assistant county manager will benefit being a sheriff?
Well, here's the deal. I know the ins and outs of the county government. I mean, from finance to human resources to everything. So I'm not behind the curve when I go to work on the first day. I know how to manipulate the system, how to use those funds that we're not using. For example, she had so many openings. She had $2.3 million left in the kitty after the year that wasn't used. Well, I believe it's because of her inexperience that she doesn't know how to go in there and repurpose that money. And that goes back to not having a relationship with the county manager or the commissioners. If you have that open relationship, you can talk to them and say, hey, I want to move this money into, for example, if we didn't have SROs trained, to an armed guard there at the school, and we could pay for that with that $2.3 million that we didn't use. We just have to repurpose it. But things like that come in handy when you know the government and how it works, how the sheriff department works, how the clerk's office works. You have a total identity of all these different elected positions, and it really helps when you're trying to get things done.
So your opponent has, let's see here. So how would you avoid potential clashes with the county manager and district attorney? Because, Kim Stewart has had pretty public clashes with both of those in the last few months.
Well, it's not just her, it's also Kiki from before on television, had clashes with these people. So I'm of a totally different class. I believe that you should have relationships with these people, not telling you how to run your business, but I had worked with Fernando before when he was a judge, I was a detective, so we have that mutual respect already. I would be able to go and tell him, this is what I'm doing, maybe once every 2 weeks, have a meeting with him, have a meeting with the commissioners and let him know, this is where my department's heading, this is what I need to complete the things that I want to do, and keep that open line of communication. I don't think you'll ever see me come up in the paper saying that I'm having a clash with the county manager or the commissioners, because I know from doing business before as the assistant county manager that's just not the way you get things done. There's a fine line there. You just have to keep them in the loop and let them know this is why I want this and this is what it will solve. And they tend to understand. But if you just say, I want to be the king of the sheriff's department and I don't want to have to deal with you people, then that's not going to work. And that's how it's being done now.
I'll ask you one more question. What is a question that you'd like to see answered from your opponent, Kim Stewart?
Honestly, I think the one that pops out the most is, so I know she fired her undersheriff, and that was quite a long time ago, Jaime Quesada. So that position was open for quite some time. Then about, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, she filled that position with her executive secretary, which boggles my mind in the first place, why you would put a secretary into a position of undersheriff when they're not law enforcement. I immediately thought, okay, she's not running again, because how would you explain that to people? That's not a good steward of our money, because you basically doubled her salary and she's not doing the work of an undersheriff. Then she turned around 2 weeks later and fired Andrea, who was technically the undersheriff at that point. So my question to her is, why is she appointing these people and why is she firing them so quickly? Is she making mistakes? Does she not know how to judge people? 2-3 weeks ago, she fired her campaign manager, and it just seems like everything's in a disarray over there. And it just shows to me that, there's a huge learning curve from this job if you try and go from a plain old deputy or detective and try and run an entire entity. There's a huge learning curve. And I always say, if I got in front of you after 4 years and all I could say was, I fixed the sheriff's department, well, you should fire me, because you should hold me accountable. I should be able to rip off 20 things that I've done that matter to the citizens and have made them safer. And she can't do that because her idea is that somehow she fixed the department from when Kiki had it. So my question to her is, why fire so many people of her command staff? And why not fill those positions? Because maybe she would have got that grant if she had a secretary and had an undersheriff. So that's my question.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Hollister?
Other than that, I think I'm the most capable person. I'm doing it for the right reasons, passion, not money. I have the endorsement of the FOP and the Sheriff's Association. That should tell people everything they need to know about why are all the cops in favor of me and not of her. So hopefully that's a telltale sign of why I should be the sheriff and not Kim Stewart.